From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Folklore. I'm your host, James Hernician. The Pledge of Allegiance is a strange beast, right from the very first word. Instead of we, it begins with I, which makes little sense because the pledge is always made in group settings, and it goes downhill from there. You could argue, as many have, that the most inappropriate element is the unconstitutional addition in 1954 of under God, but these days I'd have to say the word indivisible is even more problematic. It's been a long time since the United States of America has been this disunited. The gap between those who think of themselves as conservative and those who have embraced the progressive mantle is wider than ever. The only thing keeping people further apart is the amount of money they have. And this is a problem because until we get back to some shared understanding of what the American experiment in democracy is really all about, we have no chance of solving the real problems we face. Each time the government switches from the control of one party to another, we undo so many of the gains we've made. The Obama era brought us modest but real reforms in healthcare insurance, only to see the second Trump administration defund much of the obligations set down in the Affordable Care Act. The insufficient but still consequential steps the Biden administration took toward building an economy that doesn't run on climate-wrecking fossil fuels have all but been erased, again by Trump. Same with government support for increasing the number of employee-owned businesses. And then there's America's international reputation as a defender of freedom and democracy. It's kind of like the oscillations of a mad metronome that no one can stop. Plenty of organizations want to put an end to political polarization. The one that seems to be having the most success at the moment is the Indivisible movement. It's a loose collection of about 2,500 locals across the country that's been around for a few years now. One of the newest is Indivisible Polk Foothills, which was the main organizer of the latest No Kings rally in Columbus last month. It drew upwards of 700 people, making it one of the largest political gatherings in county history. Impressive, but it still can't be easy trying to promote progressive ideas in a county as Republican as ours. Who would want that job? Well, Chris Silverman, for one. She's a retired occupational therapist who has become a member of the leadership of the local Indivisibles. We met on the deck of the library in Columbus a week after the rally to talk about the challenges of trying to change the politics of Polk County.
Chris Silverman, welcome to Folklore.
Well, hi, James. Thanks for having me.
Let's get right to the issue which this episode is going to be all about, which is left-wing politics in a relatively red county. So explain to me who you are and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
I'm a transplant. I came from Wilmington, North Carolina, and then previously from Philadelphia. I was a little active in politics in Philadelphia with starting protests against the Iraq War way back when, marching in Washington with women's rights. It's been a little bit of a part of my life, but not consuming except for the current state of the country. It's really brought to light how important it is to take some kind of political action because it's not going to change unless we do something.
So you have an activist since you were in university.
I started university very late. I was 40 years old before I went to college. So yeah, a little late, but having children and seeing the way the world was turning back when made me very nervous and upset and want to do something. So, things quieted down in the world and it was a little better, and then it raised up again and joined in the rallies and protests with that. And then, as I said, now it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary that we do something.
Well, what do you do when you're not organizing?
Oh, when I'm not organizing, I'm taking care of goats.
Okay.
And dogs. I live in hunting country and we have a little farm, and that's what I do, my husband and I.
All right. So I'm always curious about how an organization like Indivisible gets started in a place like Polk County, because Chicago, it makes sense. Berkeley, it makes sense. Boston, there's going to be competition for your attention from the left side of the political spectrum. But Polk County is a bit different. So what made you think you had starting up an Indivisible group here? would entail. Why did you think that was a good idea?
It was meeting with like-minded people who were frustrated with the status quo of how it seemed as though nothing was happening. I mean, I'm a registered Democrat, looking at the Democratic Party and feeling like there was no leadership, there was no guidance. It was, what's the plan? All this stuff is happening. What's the plan to do something? So there were a number of us who had gotten together and said, well, what do you think? A few of the women had gone to Huntersville Indivisible, and they got really excited about that and brought it back to Polk County and said, why not Polk County? Why not have our voice heard?
Well, you mentioned that you didn't see a lot of leadership coming from the Democratic Party. And this is the thing that really interests me. We live in a country where political parties are usually the drivers of change, especially when it comes to taking part in the electoral process. Why not just change the local Democrats rather than set up not necessarily competing, but a parallel structure in the form of, which kind of maybe dilutes the amount of available energy among the community?
One of the reasons that Indivisible is such a big organization is that it's a grassroots organization. It starts with local groups, focusing on local issues for real people, not millionaires, not billionaires. It looks at the things that are important to individuals. Affordability. I mean, this is a big thing now. Affordability, education, medical issues, food issues. We have a food drive. The Democratic Party has a food drive that they do every month. And the reason that came about was because the food banks were losing funding. And this is before the cuts all happened. The food banks were losing money, and you could see the decrease in food sources coming into the food pantry. And this was before they did the cuts, like I said, but you could see that there was an increase in people coming in to access the food and the decrease in supply being available. So the food drive was started to support both outreach and the Thermal Belt outreach and the Share Thy Bread pantry. And firsthand knowledge comes from the fact that my husband was volunteering at Share Thy Bread, and he saw this and talked with the director of the program, and they were like, we're going to have a problem. So the food drive is one of those things that meets people where they are. We have people who don't have enough food and they can't feed their families. So that was one of the grassroots things. This was something that needed to happen to change. So that happened. But the other issues, it felt like all that was happening was cuts. So what do we do? There was a specific attention drawn to the fact that SNAP benefits were being cut in Polk County that would benefit the Polk County citizens. So what did we need to do in order to offset that as best we could?
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying there. That's the piece that's clear for me.
But again, couldn't you just, it's not that hard to assume a leadership role within one of the political parties, because it's just, the Republicans don't actually do a heck of a lot at the party level because they don't need to, because they keep winning elections. And the Democrats, again, because there's not that many people willing to fill all the different slots and all the different precincts, it's not that hard to become a mover and a driver in the Democratic Party. So I'm just trying to get at what role Indivisible plays in the political landscape.
Indivisible is a volunteer group that works from the outside to push progressive candidates, push the political leaders who are in position of power to make a change in a progressive way, to think about all of those grassroots issues that are important to people. So while the Democratic Party tends to be very structured, national organization where it focuses on candidates, fundraising, running the campaign, and then organizing voters, what Indivisible does is works to push that and push it and help to bring that change along. Do they work in tandem at times? Yes, absolutely they do. But their focus is separate. Their focus is not on getting a candidate. The focus is not on raising money for the campaign. The organization is not focused on, getting voters. I shouldn't say that. That's not true. That is absolutely not true. That's a misstatement. But the focus is on looking at the progressive candidates and focusing on them and pushing them and helping people understand who they are to help get them elected.
Okay. And we have seen how challenging it is for progressive candidates to win primaries in a place where, you're trying to convert the persuadables to your side. They're already leaning right. So the argument is we've just got to go with the moderate in a place like Polk County because there's just so many people who are never going to support progressives. I mean, that's the fundamental dilemma facing the Democratic Party across the country right now, which go center or go progressive. And I think there's really profoundly compelling arguments on both sides of that question because there's a lot of unknowns about where the American people really are right now. Where do you think Polk County people are right now?
Being at the rally with 700 people from Polk County, I know where they're feeling and where they're standing right now. Realistically, there are still enough people who don't see a need for change. So I tend to be a little bit more idealistic and say, why not? Why don't we push for this? If you don't push for change and you don't push progressive ideological values forward, will it ever happen? I somehow feel like I'm missing your question or I'm not answering your question.
No, I think you did a good job of it because what I'm taking away from this is that even if the eventual candidates who win the primaries and get on the ballot are more centrist than you are, it's important to have that more progressive voice always chirping away in the background,
Yes.
making sure that those issues are not forgotten and you're not letting like the Overton window move too far to the right.
Correct. Right. I think that's exactly what it is because regardless who wins the election, the Indivisible is still going to be there and we're still going to be pushing for, as you said, the things that are important to everyday people. I think the work is similar, but the focus is different. Like we're looking to make whoever's in there responsive to the needs of the citizens of Polk County on a local level. We're really working to try and get that done. Is it an uphill battle? It certainly is. I mean, we have 2 county commissioner positions open and we're hoping and working towards hoping that, one of them or both of them are filled by a Democrat who's thinking forward and progressively.
Well, those 2 candidates are Ray Gasperson and John
Lemstrom.
Both of whom have been on this podcast before. The challenge of convincing people who have fallen into the habit of voting Republican, because this county didn't always used to be Republican. Prior to 2010, Democrats more or less ran the place. And then something shifted, and we could talk for hours about why that happened and the national forces that were in play. But it's been very hard for a Democrat to get elected. Ray Gasperson was a very well-respected commissioner for the longest time, and he's run several times now and keeps falling just a little bit short.
Yeah.
Do you have any inkling that the developments of the last few months or year might be giving some former Republican, centrist type people a little bit of second thought about sticking with their party?
I would like to believe that it does, that there is going to be change. I mean, the focus is for us is to look at the people who've not voted, to look at the people who are unaffiliated, and to think about the disgruntled, dissatisfied Republican voters who really are not happy with what's happened and make a change. It's hard to think that people are not affected by what's happening in the country today. Prices of food, prices of gas, availability of this, stock market going crazy, all of these, and war. I mean, sons and daughters going off to war. It's not what was voted for. It was not what was wanted. There are all these promises that were made that aren't being fulfilled by the president. They're actually going against what he promised. I can't help but think there are enough people with common sense who would say, I'm a Republican, but I don't believe in this anymore and I can't support it.
Have you run across anybody? Say at the rally the other week, 700 and some people. I mean, that's an extraordinary turnout for Polk County for anything at all. Did you get any sense that there were like newbies there who would never come to a protest like that before?
Yes, there were new people there and they were so excited. I mean, we had people coming down the steps. I'm 70 years old and we're going to say they were older people, older than me, come with tears in their eyes. This is the first time I've ever been to one of these and this was wonderful. People sitting up on the benches up there just saying, this has been great. You know, I haven't been to one before, a gentleman in a wheelchair. I've never been to a rally before and this is great and I'm glad I'm here. You don't ask what your political party is, you're welcome. I mean, that's the nice thing about Indivisible. It's welcome to all. It's open. It's unaffiliated, disgruntled Republicans, disgruntled Democrats. Anybody is welcome to be a part of this and have your voice heard and take action with us. So there were people. There were people there that really were moved. I saw some younger people there, which was a shock and a surprise and really, really exciting to see them. I mean, teenagers who weren't there with their parents. So it was really, and I could tell they'd not been there before. They stand and they look around and it's like, come on in, join us.
The proportion of a movement that is composed of the young people, and especially in a place like Western North Carolina, which skews older, that's a really important gauge of where things are going. And it's so hard to tell where things are going, right? I mean, we really don't know what the population of voters in a place like Polk County are thinking until election night, right?
Right.
So what are you looking for? What if someone approaches you saying, just can't get over Biden or Harris or Clinton or Al Gore? For some reason, people don't like Al Gore. What would you tell them? You say, how do you bring people who are maybe a little bit skeptical, but where they've been, but aren't really feeling comfortable about casting a vote for Democrat, or even just not even getting to the point of voting, but just rethinking their place in the political spectrum? How would you engage those type of people?
I think that's one of the times that you sit and you have a conversation with people about how their life is working for them now. How are things going? How are they feeling about the way things are going? You can't change minds that easily, but you can hopefully open minds and have people receptive to different ways of looking at things. So conversations are a great way, and just not a finger pointing, not a asking like, are you happy with how things are now? But just what's in your life? What's happening in your life? What would you like to see happening? Does your candidate really support what you really want to see happening, regardless whether they're a Democrat or Republican? I probably am not the typical voter with an attitude that could look at both sides. I tend to do that, but how would we help someone see that there was another option? I think it's conversations. You want me to say specifically? I really wish I could say specifically, but it's, you don't want to be preachy. You don't want to make people feel alienated or badly about what you're sharing with them. You want to hear their perspective. You would hope that they would hear your perspective and be able to come away with a slightly different mind frame.
So how can you encourage people to have these kind of conversations? I mean, my guess is that Indivisible could host some cafe type things, European sense. They get together at a coffee shop and start hammering out how they're going to foment the revolution.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? We meet twice a month on Tuesday evenings at the Tryon Congregational Church, and we put a notice out that we're having the meeting and everyone is invited. Any and everyone is invited. And that's a place where we ask people for ideas. What are the things that are of concern to you? What are you worried about? What would you like to see happen differently? And from that, we're working on getting together groups of individuals who want to work towards that. So there's a case that you could look at. How do you target that other population that may not be receptive? A couple of people know people who are Republicans who would maybe be open to coming. I don't particularly know anybody personally.
Well, it does seem to be a problem. So we have self-segregated into two solitudes. I mean, the people who just don't connect anymore. But if we don't find a way to start talking with each other, like nothing is going to change.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what this podcast is about. And I have several hundred people who have listened to this podcast. I have no idea what their political leanings are, at least according to my analytics. That's one thing that the internet can't do. But I do know I have some young people. I have a fair number of people in their 50s and 60s. That seems to be the largest group. I would like to find a way to reach people just a little bit, just tweak them a little bit to start thinking about the ideas. And you can apply the same philosophy to maybe the Democratic Party itself, because again, that party is having a big struggle over centrism versus progressive direction. What about not even getting to the politics, just introducing the notion of let's think about where we are as a country right now. A few hours before we recorded this interview, the president posted on Truth Social about ending civilization in Iran. Shouldn't that be the type of thing that gives everybody pause? Or is that too extreme to use as a conversation starter?
I don't think that's too extreme. Unfortunately, I've heard a lot of people justify what's happening with the war. We had to go to war. We had to take Iran out because they're a threat to us. There are still people who truly believe that. So there are a number of people who believe that Trump is right and that what his actions are appropriate. I don't know how to reach those people. I don't understand what makes them feel that is a real way to go, because they're the same people who may say we're Christians and believe in God. And God, I don't know if you saw what the president said about God wanting him to be at war with Iran because God is good. And
I think he said, "Praise be Allah."
Oh no, this is afterward. This was very recently. I read it right before I came, and I was appalled because you're pulling God into this, and God does not believe. The God that I believe in does not believe you kill everybody, you annihilate a country.
Well, the problem for me for trying to use religion either to justify a horrific action or to condemn it is that the Bible and the Quran are full of both sides. I mean, Jesus said, "I come not for peace, but for the sword." Now, I think that contradicts a lot of what else he was supposedly said. But my point is simply, unless you are a biblical scholar who understands the context and the translations over the last couple of thousand years, it's really dangerous to start using scripture for any political argument. Either way, because again, you can find stuff, especially in Old Testament, about genocide and that kind of thing. So at the same time, it almost seems like you have to appeal to people where they are, and sometimes religion is where they are. I find this a really, really troubling question of framing an argument on someone else's terms can be really dangerous when it's religion. And Indivisible meets at a church, but you're not a religious organization.
Exactly.
How much does religion get brought up at your meetings? I'm guessing not.
It does not. No.
So how do you reach people who turn to religion to justify their support for war crimes?
I don't mean to be flippant, but pray for them. Honestly, it's you're asking a question that I don't know. I don't know. And I think that's one of the big concerns about how do you reach people who are absolute in their beliefs, that have no gray area, that's either black or it's white. Part of what frustrates me is when you listen to the news and you hear a statement made by the press secretary. She can spin it to make you think that you are absolutely thinking the wrong way. I mean, they're incredibly good at spinning words, and they are able to tie into what people are longing to hear. And that's the piece that I don't understand. Why is it that some people need to have that kind of justification for behaviors? It's the things that are happening and affecting the people in most need, like food stamps, medical care, education. All of these cuts are being made and they affect the people who have the least. And an example, there's a woman who works she volunteers at the food shelter, the food pantry, and she's a Republican, and she's a MAGA Republican. She's a nice lady. She's a lovely lady. You have a conversation with her around anything but politics. She's lovely. She does a ton of volunteering. She's lovely. But she is staunchly entrenched in her beliefs that make America great again and follow the guidelines that Trump is laying down for them. And you say gently to her, well, that's not quite how it needs to be. Well, what about this? And oh yeah, but there's always that but piece in there. And how do you get around it? Gently keep chipping away. Keep talking with your neighbors. We don't have horns. You don't take checks from anybody for protesting. You show the human side of it, but is that enough?
Sometimes it seems that the only way people can change their worldview is to be personally affected in a consequential way by what the government is doing. I mean, I have the same opinion about climate change. You can find some very, very strong support for climate action in parts of the country which are otherwise very red, but they've recently been devastated by a hurricane or sea level rise, or a storm or something. I think a few people in the western parts of this state have probably changed their minds about climate change thanks to Tropical Storm Helene.
Yeah.
But I find that a very dark place to go, because if that's what it's going to take, if people aren't going to change their mind about depriving the least of us of what little they have until they lose it themselves, I mean, then, it's going to take a long time to get where we need to go.
It will. And I wish I had the magic wand to make it all better. And I wish I had the wand that said, this is what we need to do, or the knowledge to say, this is what we need to do, and it'll make the difference. I don't, it's, I think that everybody knows somebody who's been affected by it. Veterans, seniors, families with children. I would bet you that everybody would be able to say, oh yeah, I know so-and-so. But it doesn't seem to be enough to make them change their opinion. And this is in general. I mean, because we don't know what people are thinking out there, but in general, the perception is that's not what it's taking to change people's minds.
So how long has the organization of Indivisible Polk Foothills been around?
I'm going to have to check on that. It's a fairly new group. I know that we started meeting and talking in the late part of 2025. The chapter came to be, I'd have to check on that for you.
I asked because I want to know how your thoughts about the power of the organization, the ability of it actually to have, to affect the change you want to see, has that evolved since you started, being part of it?
I think it has. I think people are getting a better sense of what it is they need to do and how to work it through. Indivisible is good because they have a lot of training and toolkits for how to move through and do the things you want to do. Like for the rally, there was this wonderful whole program or packet all developed for what you needed to do, how you needed to fixate on this or implement this or do that. And it was wonderful. And they have a variety of other toolkits to do that. But Indivisible for us has evolved to be a stronger group and a more focused group. I mean, it's a very small steering committee.
Well, you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen.
No, you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, but you want to have enough people that you can spread out the work. But again, that's another piece of what we're working at by having these meetings twice a month, getting people who are interested in particular topics or areas to take hold on that and follow the guidelines of the Indivisible group to facilitate the different areas they have an interest in.
How many people show up to typical meetings?
The first meeting that we had, I think we had 68 people, 60 plus people. Second one, we had 40. Third one, we had maybe I've got it backwards, like anywhere between 20 and 60 people. The last one we had, I think we had close to 60 people again.
So we're talking the size of a typical congregation at a church in Polk County, really. So it's nothing to sneer at.
Absolutely not. It's exciting. It's exciting to see that many people come out and want to be part of it. And the rationale is that we're tired. We're tired of things the way they are. We're frustrated. We want to do something.
Do you know if the group has people from all parts of the county? Or is it mostly Tryon because that's where the meetings are held?
No, there are people that come from Columbus, Green Creek. Where else do they come from? We have somebody who comes from South Carolina because she's in Lake Lanier.
Okay.
So you could spit and you're in North Carolina, but she comes in and there is a wide variety of folks from different areas. So
I know there's some from Saluda as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes.
We always forget about Saluda.
I love, do you know Sarah Jean?
Yes.
I love Sarah and Bruce, her husband. They're wonderful people. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what are you going to be focusing on between now and election day? Midterm election.
That's one of the things that as a group, we have to discuss and see where do we go next. Our focus was on the rally, getting the rally all pulled together and a lot of energy and, bringing up different ideas, but getting the rally really organized and really ready to roll and put it out there. Immigration is something we're going to focus on. Concerns around, they really haven't been in Polk County. Well, they haven't been in Polk County yet that we know of, but chances are because we have folks who are farm workers, there may be a chance. So people need to be trained and be aware of what needs to happen if we had an ICE experience. Other pieces, it'll be looking at candidates and seeing who's the candidates that we can support based on their belief structure. I'm not real sure what else we're going to do. We're going to find out when we have our meeting next Tuesday, which you're certainly welcome to come to.
Well, I've been meaning to drop by one of those things for no other reason to help me understand what is going on. Because, again, it is really interesting to look at the political parties in Polk County when it's almost like they don't need to exist because people are just voting D or R. Like I'm not convinced that for the last 3 or 4 elections, campaigning has had any effect whatsoever at the local level. It used to be that all politics was local, and you voted for the man or the woman who you trusted, who you knew, who you respected. I don't seem to be the case anymore. Now it's just D or R.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard as well. I've heard that people go in and they just straight down the line. They don't even look at the different candidates. So, we'll be actively working on helping people, women especially, understand what's out there that's going to happen, that's going to affect women. We have the SAVE Act, which is going to affect someone who's been married before.
This is the one where you'll have to get your birth certificate and make sure that the name you were born with matches your voter's registration.
That's correct. Yeah, it's sort of a variation on the Real ID. God forbid if you had been married before and you don't have names that match. The other thing is the Title 9, or I'm sorry, 10, or Title X as they refer to it. That's about contraceptive programs for women, low-income women. They want to do away with it and encourage other natural methods of contraception.
Right.
It's like, how serious is that? But again, who's it affecting? And we need to be active in helping people understand. And I think that's where we come into play, helping people understand what's at stake here. What do we really need to be aware of? What's going to happen if this goes through? What's going to happen if that goes through? We can't sit back and wait for it to happen and then fight against it. We have to be proactive. So I can't 100% say what we're working on, but I know that we're going to be addressing those two issues because they are so essential.
All right. Well,
you could ask me about how it was working with the government that was predominantly red. How had we experienced that?
well, I mean, it's not so much the government.
The biggest challenges you had
because
asked about.
my take is that the actual administration in the county and the school and everywhere else, they don't pay much attention to partisan politics, even if all 5 commissioners are Republican, and even if everybody on the school board is Republican or an independent who really believes Republican. I'm curious about individuals. Like, what do you say to somebody who really needs to be persuaded and they're just on the edge? Like we're outnumbered is what a typical left-wing person will say in Polk County, because you are. So what do you do to grow your group? That goes to the heart of any political movement. How do you change people's minds? We've covered this, but
awareness is another one too. I know I said conversation, but I think awareness, bringing more awareness to the different issues. We're not as different as people want to believe we are. I mean, we all want the same things for our families and our friends. I don't think we're that far apart.
All right. Well, thanks so very much for your time. I know this is a really tricky thing to get your head around, and I don't expect anyone to have all the answers because it's obvious that nobody does. So good luck, and maybe we'll talk again towards the election.
Okay. That would be great. Thanks, James.
I know that conversation was a little frustrating, in the sense that we didn't actually manage to come to any conclusions about the wisdom of any particular course of action. But that's where we are at the moment. One nation, under one God or many or none, divided and struggling to find our way back to a place we can feel comfortable with. And I don't think pretending that the answers are easy to find would have made for an honest conversation. Thanks for listening to it. If you've got any suggestions for more honest conversations or feedback about this one, email them to jamesh@polklore.com.